If you have ever felt frustrated watching someone master a new skill with ease while you struggle just to begin, this message is for you. There is a quiet truth most people never hear, especially women who have spent their lives adapting, caring, and starting over. Learning is not slow because you are incapable. It is slow because no one taught you the way your mind and heart were always meant to learn. For many women, especially after 40, learning something new carries a hidden emotional weight. You are not just learning a skill. You are learning while carrying memories of past failures, responsibilities that never pause, and a voice inside that whispers, maybe it's too late. This is why so many intelligent, capable women give up too soon. Not because they lack discipline, but because the learning process itself was never designed with their inner world in mind. Centuries ago in Japan, masters understood something modern culture forgot. They knew that learning is not a race, and it is not a performance. It is a relationship between patience and repetition, between humility and trust, between effort and surrender. They called this natural rhythm shuhari. Shuhari is not a productivity hack. It is a human system, one that respects how the nervous system learns, how confidence grows, and how identity transforms over time. Samurai warriors, tea ceremony masters, calligraphers, and artisans followed it not to learn faster in a shallow way, but to learn deeper in a lasting way. Most people today approach learning backward. They want to feel original immediately. They want to add their personality before they have built stability. They want results before roots. This pressure is especially heavy on women who already feel they must prove their worth in everything they do. But Shuhari offers relief. It says you do not need to impress. You need to arrive. The first stage is shu. It means to follow, to protect, to stay close. In this stage, you do not innovate, you do not question, you do not personalize. You observe, copy, and repeat with care. This is where many women feel resistance, because following feels passive, because copying feels small, because obedience was often forced on you in other areas of life. But shu is not submission, it is safety. When a woman enters shu, she gives her mind permission to rest. She no longer carries the burden of deciding if she is doing it right. She trusts the path laid before her. This trust calms the nervous system, allowing learning to settle into the body instead of bouncing around in self-doubt. Miyamoto Musashi, one of Japan's most respected swordsmen, did not invent his style overnight. In his early years, he copied relentlessly. Foot placement, timing, breath, grip. Not to erase himself, but to empty himself of chaos. Only a quiet mind can absorb precision. This applies just as deeply to your life today. If you are learning a language, you repeat phrases exactly as taught. If you are learning an instrument, you play as written. If you are learning a new profession, you follow the structure before reshaping it. And if you are learning a new way of living, you begin by borrowing stability before creating freedom. Here is a gentle truth many women need to hear. Copying is not weakness, it is wisdom. If this idea resonates with you, I would love to know. What is something you've wanted to learn but felt hesitant to begin? You can share it in the comments. Your voice matters here. As shu deepens, something subtle happens. Confidence grows quietly. Not the loud kind that seeks approval, but the grounded kind that comes from familiarity. Your hands know what to do. Your mind stops panicking. You are no longer a stranger to the skill, or to yourself within it. Only then does the second stage appear naturally. Ha, to break away, to loosen, to test. Ha is where many women believe learning should begin, but it cannot survive there without shu. In ha, you explore, you adjust, you notice what fits your body, your rhythm, your temperament. But because you built a foundation, your experiments are grounded, not chaotic. In traditional Japan, once a student mastered the basics, they were often sent away from their teacher, not as rejection, but as trust. They trained with others, they faced unfamiliar challenges, they learned where rigidity failed and where adaptation was required. For a woman, ha often shows up as courage, the courage to try without guarantees, to change approaches without shame, to say, this way doesn't suit me, without abandoning the path entirely. This stage can feel uncomfortable. You may fail more visibly. You may question yourself again, but this time the doubt is different. It is curious, not cruel. And if you are finding value in this reflection, feel welcome to subscribe to the channel. This space is being created for women like you, who learn deeply and live thoughtfully. Eventually, after patience and time, the third stage arrives on its own. To leave, to separate, to become.
Re is not rebellion, it is integration. At this stage, you no longer think about rules. You move naturally. The skill expresses who you are instead of something you perform. Musashi reached this in his later years, when he developed a two-sword style not to be different, but because his body and understanding asked for it. For women, Re often appears quietly. One day you realize you are no longer trying to learn confidence. You simply speak. You no longer try to practice boundaries. You live them. You no longer force discipline. Your habits align because your identity has shifted. This is why shuhari allows learning to happen faster in the ways that matter most. Not rushed, not pressured, but rooted. If you are beginning again in this season of life, know this. Your age is not a limitation. It is an advantage. You carry discernment. You carry patience. You carry depth. Shuhari honors that.
You do not need to become someone else to learn. You need to walk the path in the right order. There is a moment in every woman's learning journey when she realizes something important has shifted. She is no longer forcing herself to show up. She no longer needs constant motivation. She begins to feel a quiet familiarity, as if the skill she is learning has started to recognize her too. This is the subtle signal that she has moved beyond simply trying and has begun embodying the process. For many women, this moment is deeply emotional, especially for those who have spent years putting their own growth last. Learning in this phase stops being about achievement and starts becoming about presence. It becomes a space where she is allowed to focus on herself without apology. This is where shuhari reveals its deeper wisdom, because the system is not only about mastering an external skill, it is also about reshaping how a woman relates to effort, patience, and self-trust. In the shu stage, you followed. In ha, you begin to listen inward. Ha is not chaos, it is conversation. At this stage, a woman starts to notice subtle truths. She notices when something feels forced. She notices when her energy flows more naturally. She begins to understand her own rhythm instead of copying someone else's pace. This is especially important for women who were taught early in life to adjust themselves constantly for others. In ha, you finally get to ask, what works for me? But here is what makes this stage powerful rather than confusing. You are not starting from nothing. You are starting from stability. The fundamentals you practiced during shu are now supporting you like strong roots. Because of that, experimentation does not feel like panic. It feels like curiosity. Many women abandon learning right here without realizing it. They feel discomfort and assume something is wrong. They interpret uncertainty as failure. But the Japanese masters understood something essential. Growth always feels unstable before it feels natural. A tea ceremony student, after years of copying precise movements, eventually begins to adjust their pace. Slightly slower pours, subtle changes in posture. Not because they are careless, but because they are listening to the moment. The ritual becomes alive. This is how learning becomes personal without becoming sloppy. For a woman learning later in life, ha is where self-respect is rebuilt. She stops criticizing herself for not being perfect. She stops rushing to prove competence. She allows herself to be in process. This permission alone accelerates learning more than pressure ever could. There is also something deeply healing that happens here. Many women associate learning with judgment, grades, comparison, shame. But ha invites a different energy. It says explore without self-punishment, adjust without self-betrayal. If you are in this stage right now, you might notice moments of doubt returning, but they feel different than before. Instead of, I can't do this, the doubt sounds more like, which way suits me better? That question is not weakness, it is wisdom awakening. And here is something important to remember. Ha cannot be rushed. Modern culture tells women they should constantly reinvent themselves, change careers quickly, redefine identities overnight, master new technologies instantly. But shuhari protects you from this exhaustion. It reminds you that depth is more valuable than speed. Miyamoto Musashi did not discover his unique style by chasing originality. He discovered it by staying present long enough to notice what his body already knew. Years of discipline allowed intuition to speak clearly. For women, intuition is often strong but ignored. Ha is where intuition earns its voice again. Not the anxious voice that fears judgment, but the grounded voice that recognizes alignment. And if this reflection feels meaningful to you, I invite you to stay connected. There is more unfolding here, and you are not meant to walk this path alone. As Ha matures, something interesting happens. Effort decreases, but awareness increases. You begin to correct yourself without harshness. You notice mistakes without spiraling. You trust that refinement is part of the journey, not a sign you are behind. Eventually, without announcing itself, Re begins to emerge. Re is not a destination you decide to reach. It is a state that arrives when the work has been absorbed fully. This is why so few people reach it, not because it is rare, but because it cannot be forced. In Re, a woman no longer performs learning, she lives it. Think about moments in your life when something became second nature. Cooking without recipes, offering comfort without thinking, navigating challenges with calm you didn't know you had. That is Re energy. It is embodied knowledge. In traditional Japanese arts, masters in Re often appear simple. They do not display complexity. They do not over-explain. Their movements are quiet, efficient, and deeply human. This is mastery stripped of ego. For women, Re often shows up as ease. Ease in decision-making, ease in boundaries, ease in learning new things without self-doubt whispering in the background. This is why shuhari allows learning to happen 10 times faster in the ways that matter, not by skipping steps, but by removing inner resistance. When the nervous system feels safe, the mind opens. When the mind is calm, learning sticks. If you have ever felt like you were slow to learn, consider this. Maybe you were simply protecting yourself from a system that never respected your rhythm. Shuhari respects it. It honors repetition without boredom, change without chaos, mastery without violence toward the self. As women move through midlife, something profound becomes possible. Learning is no longer about becoming acceptable. It becomes about becoming authentic. This is why so many women feel called to learn again at this stage.
Not to prove anything, but to reclaim parts of themselves that were set aside. You are not late, you are prepared. The ancient Japanese masters understood that wisdom matures with time. So does learning, so does identity. In the final part, everything comes together. The emotional, the practical, the transformation that quietly changes how a woman sees herself and her future. There comes a quiet moment in a woman's life when learning stops feeling like effort and starts feeling like truth. It does not arrive with celebration or applause. It arrives softly, often unnoticed, like the moment you realize you are breathing differently than before. This is the moment when knowledge has stopped living in the mind and has settled into the body. This is where everything the Japanese masters understood finally reveals its deeper meaning. Re is not about doing more. It is about becoming less divided. At this stage, a woman is no longer trying to prove competence. She is no longer measuring herself against others. She no longer asks, "Am I doing this right?" because the question itself has dissolved. What remains is alignment. Her actions, values, and instincts move in the same direction. For many women, especially after decades of caring for others, this is profoundly liberating. Learning no longer feels like another responsibility. It feels like a homecoming. In Re, you are not applying techniques, you are responding to life. This is why mastery looks so different in mature women than it does in the young. It is quieter, more grounded, less performative. A woman in Re does not rush to explain herself. She does not force visibility. She trusts that what is true carries its own weight. Miyamoto Musashi, in the final years of his life, stopped teaching techniques altogether. Instead, he wrote about principles, flow, timing, awareness. He understood that once the foundation is complete, instruction must give way to intuition. Words become less important than presence. This applies directly to how women learn, work, and live today. A woman who has reached this stage might learn a new skill faster, not because she memorizes better, but because she no longer resists uncertainty. She does not panic when she doesn't know something. She stays open, calm, curious. This emotional regulation accelerates learning in ways no shortcut ever could. What slows learning is not lack of intelligence. It is fear. Fear of failure, fear of looking foolish, fear of being judged, fear of starting again. Shuhari gently removes these fears one layer at a time. Shu provides safety. Ha builds trust. Re offers freedom. And freedom is where learning becomes effortless.
This is why women in their 40s, 50s, and 60s often experience sudden breakthroughs, not because something magical happened, but because something heavy was finally released. The need to prove, the need to rush, the need to meet someone else's standard. Learning becomes intimate, personal, honest.
You may notice this in your daily life already. You choose differently. You absorb information more selectively. You no longer chase everything. You learn what matters, and because it matters, it stays. This is the hidden secret behind the phrase 10 times faster. Not speed, but efficiency of attention. When your energy is no longer scattered by self-doubt, it concentrates naturally. If this reflection is touching something inside you, take a moment to honor that. And if this space feels supportive, subscribe and remain part of this circle of feminine wisdom. You are welcome here. At this stage, learning and identity are no longer separate. A woman no longer says, "I am trying to become confident." She says, "I trust myself." She no longer says, "I am learning boundaries." She says, "I choose what protects my peace." The behavior follows the belief, not the other way around. This is why shuhari is not just a learning system, it is an identity system. In the West, women are often told to push harder, reinvent constantly, stay relevant. But the Japanese path suggests something radically different. Settle deeper, integrate slowly, let wisdom mature. There is immense power in a woman who moves at her own pace without apology. And here is something rarely said out loud. Many women were never allowed to be beginners. They were expected to know, to manage, to hold everything together. Starting something new later in life can awaken old fears of inadequacy. Shuhari dissolves those fears by honoring process over performance. You are allowed to begin without pressure. You are allowed to learn without urgency. You are allowed to grow without abandoning yourself. When learning is approached this way, it stops draining you and starts nourishing you. This is the heart of Japanese mastery. Not domination of a skill, but harmony with it. And harmony is something women understand deeply. By the time a woman reaches midlife, she has learned more than she realizes. About people, about resilience, about loss and renewal. Shuhari does not ignore this wisdom, it builds upon it. That is why it feels so natural when discovered at this stage. You are not behind, you are perfectly positioned. The final realization is this: learning faster is not about doing more in less time. It is about removing what slows you down internally. Self-judgment, comparison, fear. When those fall away, progress becomes inevitable. The ancient Japanese masters did not chase mastery. They lived in devotion to the path. Mastery arrived on its own. You can do the same. Let learning be gentle. Let repetition be kind. Let curiosity replace pressure. And trust that everything you need is already unfolding within you. If this journey resonated with your heart, subscribe and join this circle of feminine wisdom. There are many paths ahead, and you do not have to walk them alone.